Hi, I'm Dan Taylor, a program manager on the Visual Studio Diagnostics team. Everyone wants their code to run fast, but as a developer, you are usually focused on getting your features working, and you don't always have time to learn and use a separate set of profiling tools to find and fix performance issues in your application. As a result, many performance issues can go unfound until late in the release when there's little time left to make large changes to your code. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use the new Debugger PerfTips feature to measure performance just by pressing F5, setting breakpoints, and stepping with the debugger. In this talk, we're going to dive right into a demo of PerfTips, and then I will share with you a link to our blog post to find out more. Let's take a look. Here I am in Visual Studio 2015 Preview with my app Photo Filter. I can press F5 to run this app, and we'll see that it takes a long time for this application to start up and for the pictures to be displayed. Based on what I see in the app, I suspect that loading images takes up a large portion of the startup time. To validate this hypothesis, I can go ahead and set a breakpoint at the start and the end of the load images function in my app. Now when I press F5, I run to the first breakpoint, and then I can press F5 again to run to the second breakpoint. I can see that it's taking a long time for the code between these two breakpoints to run. And when I hit the second breakpoint, I see the Debugger PerfTip displayed, which tells us that it actually took the application 11,670 milliseconds to run from the first breakpoint to the second breakpoint. Hovering on the PerfTip, I get additional information that tells me that the app used about 1,390 milliseconds of CPU during that time. We can see which lines took the longest to run by F5ing the application again and stepping over each line. Notice that as we step, the PerfTip tells us how long the previous line took to execute. As I step over the first three lines, each one completed in less than 10 milliseconds, so I can eliminate them from my performance investigation. Now when I step over the getImagesFromCloud method, I see that it takes longer to run, and the PerfTip will tell me that this method took about 10 seconds to run. Stepping over the load images from disk method, it completed in about 600 milliseconds. The link query here finishes in less than a second, and the last two statements in this function both completed in less than 10 milliseconds. I now know that I can focus my performance investigation on these three lines. The getImagesFromCloud method took the longest, so we want to start there first. I can right-click and say Go to Definition, or press F12. And I can also use PerfTips using the Run to Cursor feature in the debugger to run to the first line of this method. I notice that this method is divided into two main portions. The first portion downloads the images from the server, and the second portion downloads each picture one at a time. I could again use Run to Cursor to see how long the first portion took to execute, and we'll see that it took less than 570 milliseconds to download the list of pictures from the server, and I can again run to cursor on the last line to see that downloading the pictures actually takes the majority of the time, this time taking about 6 seconds to complete. I suspect that I can make this faster by starting all of the image downloads at the same time and then waiting for them all to complete at once. I can do this by uncommenting the lines of code I have here. And now when I run this application, I can time how long it takes to download all the pictures in parallel. This time I'm going to press Ctrl F10 to run to the end of the function, and we should see that it is now running faster, and indeed this now completes in less than 2 6.8 seconds, whereas before it was about 6. More than twice as fast. We can go back and time how long the overall getting the images from the cloud method takes by pressing F5 and stepping over this line of code again. Before this took about 10 seconds to complete, now it completes in less than 3.3 seconds. I can also turn on additional information in the PerfTips. Simply by clicking on the PerfTip and then clicking PerfTips options, I have the ability to turn on the CPU time PerfTip. Notice that I can also configure a threshold here so that PerfTips are only displayed when the numbers are large. However, we're just going to leave them always on. Now when I step over the lines of code, I can see the CPU time directly in the PerfTip itself rather than having to look at the tooltip on hover. Stepping over this link query again, we can see that this link query took about a second to complete. However, it only used about 270 milliseconds of CPU. This is surprising because we would expect a link query to be a CPU-intensive operation because it should just be sorting the images by folder name. This is telling us that there may be some I/O involved. Looking at the image folder property, it may give us some clues as to what's happening. We see that by going to definition on this property, it returns a storage folder type, and that storage folder is retrieved by taking the path of the image and then looking up on disk the folders in that path one at a time. If we scroll down in this image item class, we see that instead we could use the folder name property, which instead of going to the disk, just takes the path and then uses string concatenation to pull out the folder name. Going back to our original line of code, we can use this other property, the folder name property instead, which should be much faster. Again, we can use Control F10 to run directly to this line of code. And then when we step over it, we see it completes in less than 35 milliseconds. Now that we've made a couple of improvements to this method, we can go back and time how long it takes for the overall loading of images to complete. I set breakpoints at the start and the end of the function, just like before. Now when I press F5, and then I run to the second breakpoint, we'll see that this overall function completes in less than 4 seconds now, whereas before it took about 13. I've just shown you that you can use PerfTips to measure performance as a regular part of your edit, compile, debug cycle. For more information, be sure to check out our blog post on PerfTips using the link shown to you on the screen. Thank you for watching.